So for our final session of the summit, I would like to bring back Vipe Desai, Executive Director of SIMA, and introduce Chris Grow, Marketing Director, Firewire Surfboards, for a fireside chat. So Chris Grow is Marketing Director at Firewire Surfboards, where he has spent the past 7 years in collaboration with Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, Dan Mann, and a deep stable of other international athletes and surfboards designers such as Harley Ingleby, CJ Nelson, Taylor Jensen, and many more. Based in Carlsbad, California, Chris works with a talented global team across Firewire's offices in Australia, the US, Europe, Thailand, and Japan to enhance the surfing experience with innovative shapes and construction methods while supporting surf retailers as the cornerstone of our surfing culture. So a very warm welcome, Vipe and Chris. Take it away.
Thanks, Lyndall. Well, Chris, we're going to jump right into it because of time and everything. But look, we heard some great data insights from Eric, and we also heard about what's going on at retail as well. Let's talk about from the brand perspective. How's the market now compared to what was going on pre-pandemic?
Well, I wish we were all together at dinner because I would much prefer to be in a conversation over drinks with everyone who just spoke and everyone else on the call. But look, the market, just I'll move through some of this quickly and for time. Surfline, I love Surfline because it's a bunch of quantitative, talented folks over there that didn't necessarily come from surfing. They crunch a lot of numbers. They don't just have this CAM network. They don't just do forecasts, but they really look at data in like such an analytical way. They're like the Action Watch of the ocean. And they released this really compelling statistic. Basically, if you lived in California over the spring, your average break was about 40% worse than the baseline average. That happened on the tail end of a winter that wasn't good because all the wind and the rain and the water quality issues. And while the snow resorts had a banner season, California, west coast of the US just didn't have that. That obviously impacted things. Australia, potentially maybe something you described as a COVID hangover for us or a COVID quiver. Everyone accumulated a quiver during COVID and they've still got that quiver. But we just had our kind of global sales calls today, and just unanimously across all the regions, the sentiment was that we've seen the trough of it, and now there's the kind of anecdotal and the data-driven experiences to suggest that we're on an upward trend. So it's interesting how kind of, from our perspective, things really do kind of mirror some of the optimistic data points that we saw from Action Watch earlier.
Got it. Thanks, Chris. Look, let's also talk about one of the most important aspects of your business and from the retailers that we just heard about, the consumers. Can you share any insights on retail and e-com strategies from the consumer perspective? What's it take to reach today's hard goods consumer?
Well, I'll focus in on the retail aspect of it for a second, because at Firewire, we really truly do think that surf shops are the cornerstone of our surfing culture, because they are. They're a source of inspiration and education that is absolutely critical to a surfboard brand like ours. But I think that generally, what we've learned is that you have to create product within the consumer experience. If you look at the waves that most surfers are riding, they're still riding the junk waves in front of their house. As was mentioned earlier, they're not dialing in performance boards for KS Wave Co. or other wave pools. They're buying daily drivers and boards that they're going to surf every day out front. In our case, that just means a very deep focus on boards by guys like Dan Mann and Rob Machado, the Sweet Potato, the Mashup, which was a collaboration between Dan and Rob. The Revo by Daniel Thompson works really great in small waves. The Dominator from Dan Mann. We kind of have our quiver, the Firewire quiver, designed by all these great surfboard designers, is really optimized around everyday waves. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been able to maintain a certain base level of success in spite of the industry trends that we're seeing. I think generally, just to wrap this up for a sec, like trunks or clothing can potentially be more of an aspirational purchase in the mind of a consumer. They might buy a pair of trunks because Kelly Slater or Mick Fanning wears them. it's not so simple with sporting hard goods. I think the surfboard consumer is educated to the point where they want to buy something for their real lived experience. I think that that's important to consider.
Got it. So you touched on retail and everything, but what about e-com? How does that play into what you guys do? Because I know that every brand has to have some sort of e-com strategy, and not necessarily selling, but also when it comes to marketing and driving consumer energy and interest in the product.
Well, it's a good question. Our strategy is to have an e-com strategy in that we have a store that exists D2C, but it's not the focus of our business. Someone can fact check me if they'd like, but I think that of the global surfboard brands who operate at scale around the world, we really were the last, I think, to really get an e-com store up and going, because we recognized that surf shops were the cornerstone of our business and our culture. So I think our strategy is to let the e-com store exist. That's just the D2C part of it, but try to focus as much as we can on directing foot traffic to physical retail. We also have a network of global partners who run their own e-commerce store, places like Cleanline in Oregon, where Action Watch is based, I believe, boardshop.co.uk, Real Water Sports, SurfStation, Catalyst. I mean, the list goes on. We do a lot to support our partner retail portals. And interestingly, on our global sales calls today, we had a call with our US sales director, and his insight was that, you know, while physical retail has been a little slow because of the bad weather, for some reason, we don't know why, there were some really good results coming out of our e-commerce partners. I couldn't tell you exactly why that happened, but they sort of bucked the trend to an extent that we've been talking about at physical retail.
Got it. Thanks, Chris. You know, in speaking with you in the past, and also Mark Price and the rest of the team, it really sounds like, you know, you guys pay special attention to the consumer and understanding what they're interested in. You know, have you gotten any insights? Is it a product play or is it a marketing play that entices the consumer?
It's a really good question. I'll try to give a short answer here and just tell you guys a story. Back in 2017, I was relatively new to Firewire. Rob Machado at the same time was relatively new to Firewire. We may have only been here for about a year. We were getting ready to launch a surfboard called the Go Fish, twin keel fish shape that Rob Machado designed. We were trying to come up with a marketing campaign, and we got these clips from Reef that Reef had filmed and paid for, shot in France, very small waves. We were looking at these clips of Rob surfing these small waves, and it didn't really fit the kind of footage that you would traditionally use to market a product because the waves were so small. We used them in the marketing campaign anyway, and it became one of our top 1 or 2 or 3 marketing campaigns we've ever done to launch a surfboard. We showed the board in small relatable waves in France that anyone could see in front of their house if the winds were just okay. And the funny thing on the back of that is Rob Machado and I were talking over acai bowls about a month later, and he kind of had this thought. He said, you know, the reason those early momentum videos were so successful with Taylor Steele is because we were all surfing Mission Beach. Mission Beach is a terrible wave. And the lesson there is that from a marketing perspective, it's just extremely important to communicate to the consumer within conditions that they can relate to if you're trying to drive a purchasing decision. I think that the short way we describe that in Firewire is aspirational performances in relatable waves. You can market with an aspirational performance at Chopu, but there's nothing relatable about that. If you can get an aspirational performance from a Kevin Schultz, a Rob Machado, a Timmy Reyes, a Kelly Slater in a relatable wave, for us, that's just been a real great takeaway over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's really good insight there, Chris. I know that a lot of us look at the World Tour and see these athletes performing in world-class waves and dream of that experience, but really at the end of the day, our backyard is pretty crappy local break, blown out and everything. Yeah. And it's great to see athletes ripping, you know, in just mediocre conditions. So I think that's relatable to the average consumer.
Yeah, I agree. And there are a couple brands that you see all over the WSL that you don't necessarily see at surf retail. So it is interesting to consider.
Yeah. Let's zoom in a little bit closer to your business and your day-to-day operations. How has product marketing changed in the past 5 years for you guys?
You know, I actually pulled up a star surf skate example. This is a video. You can't see it because the blend. This is a video that we made. The video that we made of Dan Mann and Kevin Schultz promoting a surfboard called the Dominator that I was scrolling through their Instagram when Wooly was talking, and I saw that they posted it a while back. Here's what's changed. I remember when you used to just create like a marketing campaign or a content suite and launch the product, and that was it. Now it's a constant editorializing of the product in perpetuity. If anyone wants, you can look at Firewire Surfboards, Dan Mann and Rob Machado Surfboards Instagram right now, and you'll see multiple different layered storytelling pieces of content promoting the mashup that we've been releasing over the last 3 or 4 days. And that's just an example, if anyone wants to look at those Instagram accounts, of how we're telling stories in perpetuity, constantly editorializing the product over and over and over to consistently drive traffic into retail. It's not like it used to be where you did the marketing campaign, you did the content drop, you told the world that the product existed, they all go buy it and they all remember it for 6 months. Now, it's not so much a marketing campaign as it is an editorial exercise and constantly editorializing your product in creative ways. That, I think, has been how our ops have changed from a marketing perspective over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it's great to hear you say that, because I think the consumer has gotten so much more smarter and savvy, and you need to connect with them on an emotional basis, and storytelling is part of that, editorializing the product and everything. Anything else you guys have added to the marketing mix?
You know, it's very interesting to think, and again, this is something that I'd love everyone's opinion on, and I wish we were all at dinner, because there's some things about marketing that just don't change. You can read certain books about marketing that were written 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, and they're all something that is absolutely relevant today. It's just a matter of the distribution channels changing. So in my view, I'll use an example of the Sweet Potato, which is a surfboard that is quite simply the widest, shortest, fattest, most low rocker board you will ever ride. And it's designed for 2-foot waves. And we say that within the marketing communications, because we're telling you very specifically, it's the widest, flattest, shortest board you're ever going to ride. This is not a board for a 4-foot wave. And I think that just the simple act of getting your statement of benefits accurate when you're communicating what a board is never goes out of style. It never ceases to be useful. So if anything, though we have innovated in a few ways that I'm going to leave out, if anything, it's being very focused on the critical few things you can do when you're marketing a product that have the biggest potential output for your retail partners. And we try to focus on the few things, the 2 or 3 out of 10 things we can do that give us the 8 or 9 positive things for a retail partner. And it's just consistently and reliably going back to the bare bones of what marketing is in the first place, getting your message right and consuming and conveying a set of benefits to the consumer. That's it.
Yeah. Well, you must be the marketing director over at Firewire Surfboards, because it sounds like you just laid some good marketing insights on us. Look, let's talk a little bit about the WSL and the World Tour. You know, they launched something really interesting this year, and I'd love to get your take on it. But what are your thoughts on the Shaper rankings? It sounds like a pretty cool thing to put board builders up front and center instead of just the athletes themselves.
Yeah, both Wooly and Kevmo touched on this, and I thought it was compelling. Surfboards are too cheap. And the people who put the hard yards into designing them, thinking about them, innovating them, you know, they deserve more attention. They deserve more notoriety. They deserve a bigger stage to play on. So I think it's a cool initiative that the WSL is doing. I was fortunate to hear about it from Dave Proden when they were kind of conceiving what that was going to be. And I think it's super fun, super cool. We talk about layered storytelling and marketing all the time. It's just another story that the WSL can tell. And I applaud it, and I think it's great. And it's something that I hope they experiment more with, highlighting the people who design the boards that all these athletes are riding.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out at the end of the year and how the rankings shake out, but also how that translates into sales or consumer sentiment and interest. And
Yeah,
I think they've got a really good idea in the works, and I think, like I said, at the end of the year, we're going to see how it shakes out. But overall, I think it's a great start and a great addition to the WSL.
yeah, for sure.
Look, you know, I want to jump into a little bit of rapid fire questioning as we wrap out everything. You know, let's go back, put your marketing hat on, and I'd love to hear, you know, your SWOT analysis for the industry for takeaways. You know, just real quick, a couple words or a sentence: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
So, strength for the surf hard goods industry, surfing is always going to be fun, whether it trends in or out of style in greater culture. Surfing will always be fun. So that's the strength. Is the same thing that all of us on this call went through when we rode that wave the first time and looked down and saw water moving beneath our feet and we're standing. That's always going to be there. Weakness, it can lose its cultural appeal at times. It can go out of vogue or in vogue. One of the most interesting things to me has been seeing how like concert culture and rave culture and go to a live event culture has become such a big part of the youth experience around the world. Whereas for me, I was raised thinking that going to the beach was the experience. Now it's more like going to a festival. So it can be vulnerable to coming in and out of vogue. Opportunity, artificial waves. Kevo and Wooly were talking about it earlier. We do have more artificial waves in the States, and we do see how that is good for the surf hard goods space. That's probably a conversation for another fireside. Threat. I appreciated Bo's comments earlier about skate hard goods and the Action Watch data that supported skateboarding getting hit harder than surf hard goods, because I grew up skateboarding, and one of the most shocking things to me was seeing how scooters became a thing. Scooters, and now we have one wheels, all these different things, you know. So the threat is basically, could there be something like scooters or one wheels or whatever that impacts surf hard goods in the way that these things have impacted skate hard goods? I don't think that's going to happen, but it's on my mind.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thanks so much for those insights. You know, I think I could have a couple beers with you, and this conversation could go on and on and on and go all over the place. But look, thanks so much for sitting in on this session and sharing insights.